I'll go directly to Professor César das Neves. Professor, your popular column is called No Free Lunch. So I would like to see if you see too many free lunches going around. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also thank the invitation. And I'll start by the general question of the session, austerity heals or austerity kills. And I think this is a very similar question to the other one, which is chemotherapy heals or chemotherapy kills, and the answer is both. But this point of view shows that the question is badly put, right? Because the question is not chemotherapy, it's cancer. The question is the disease. And one of the most remarkable things around is that everybody's talking about treatments, but nobody's talking about the disease. What is the problem? It is very stupid to submit somebody to a lot of radiation, except if that person has cancer, right? So if you discuss radiation, is it a good idea? Well, in some cases, in others don't. So the real problem is you should look at the disease. And what is the disease? Well, the disease is suspicion. It's mistrust, it's lack of confidence. That is the disease. The problem today, not only in Europe, but also in America and other countries, is that people don't trust other people. The creditors don't trust the debtors, and the debtors don't trust the creditors. The northern countries in Europe don't trust the southern countries, and vice versa. We don't trust the politicians, they don't like us. All this situation is a lack of confidence, a lack of trust. And that's one of the most deadly diseases in social life, as you know. So this is all over, and let me show you that this is not only true if you look at the data in the longer term, but also this also shows another thing, is that we live in the region of the world which is less purpose of austerity, which less austerity is visible. It's very simple if you do that by looking at all the tenure of all the countries inside the euro. If you add all the year countries that we lived inside the euro, you know that not all of us entered at the same time, so if you add all of them, 48%, meaning half of the time of the years, we were above the threshold of 3%. So half of all the time that all of us spend inside the euro, we were above the limit. There were 3 countries that spent all their tenure inside the euro above the 3%. And those 3 countries are Portugal for 15 years, Greece for 13 years, and Slovakia for 5 years. There are 2 countries that spent all of their 6 years except 1 above the threshold, and that is Cyprus and Malta. And there are 3 others that spend more than half of their tenure inside the euro above the 3%, and that is Slovenia, Italy, and France. This is a long-term problem, and nobody talked about austerity during all this long term until we lost confidence, until suspicion rise up with the crisis. If we look even further and start not only on the birth of the euro, but on the Maastricht Treaty, and add all the years since the Maastricht Treaty for all the countries inside the eurozone, and those that entered the EU afterwards, the years that they have been inside the EU, the number is magically the same, 48.4%, the same. Half of the time, the countries since the Maastricht Treaty were above the limit, and the austerity didn't solve this problem. So we not have too much austerity. The problem is that we had too less austerity before the problem came, and we lost, as Professor Cardoso said, the leeway. We lost the deficit leeway, and now we are forced in the wrong time, as Keynes have explained a long time ago, to apply austerity. Now, I'll spend the rest of my time, which is short, looking at the 5 fallacies that I think are destroying all the economics of austerity. That's the topic I was given, the economics of austerity. And I think that the problem around is 5 terrible fallacies. The first one is the fallacy of blaming the doctor. And that is the fallacy of missing the problem with the cure, the disease and the treatment. That we blame the treatment and don't look at the disease, and that's why we are blaming the doctor. The second is, and I have to be quick, the fallacy of trolls. If you've seen, most of the people that talk about austerity, they say there are kind of trolls or orcs, you know, these monsters. And the good thing about trolls is that we can kill them and have no problems of conscience because they're monsters. So we can actually rob them and beat them, and it's great because they're trolls. And you can choose your pick of trolls. Just think about how you look at the situation. There are always a small group of trolls. They are the creditors. They're not like us. They don't have families and they don't have kids. They don't want to do with their money what we want to do with the money. And you can rob them. Who cares? They're trolls. Or the bankers, everybody knows they're trolls. Well, the politicians, you can choose your pick of trolls, but they're always trolls. And I've been around, I only saw people like me, good and bad. I'm bad sometimes and good at other times, but I've looked around, and if I visited the trolls, and well, they believed that were trolls, not them, but others were trolls, and they were not trolls. They're not trolls, it's just us. And we are terrible people, we know each other, we see in the mirror, but also nicer. And that's the question. So when somebody identifies trolls, they are just evading the question. The third fallacy is the fallacy of being born yesterday. You know the amount of innocence around? Everybody's innocent. They're just born yesterday. They were not here before. Even politicians were in power when the crisis was brewing. They are now very innocent. They are blameless. Everybody's innocent. But the other thing of the fallacy of being born yesterday is the fact that most of the people present solutions and cures that were great 10 years ago, 15 years ago. If you had done that, we would not have a problem today. When the solutions that they promote now, it's impossible. Now we don't have any choice. But 15 years ago, we should have done that. Unfortunately, they were born yesterday. The fourth fallacy is the fallacy of the false poor. Everybody's poor around, and everybody's complaining about the cuts because I'm very poor, and you couldn't cut me. Well, one of the big problems of the poor is that they don't have no voice. So be sure that all the guys that are complaining, they are not poor, or else we wouldn't be listening to them. The last and the most important of the fallacies, as was said in my presentation just a moment ago, is the fallacy of the free lunch. And there are several fallacies of the free lunch around. The first one is actually what built the crisis. Lunch is paid by debt. They are free. We don't have to pay them. Well, now the bill has come. That's the first free lunch. It has been a long free lunch, and that's why we're in this mess. The second free lunch is now the free lunch of the Troika. We can expel the Troika, and that's a free lunch. We'll be safe from the Troika, and there'll be no problem. Actually, the money that the Troika has given us, it'll come anyway, because it's a free lunch, and we can expel them and be safe. Well, another free lunch is the free lunch of the default. We can default on the debt, and that's a free lunch. There'll be no problem. No care, there are no costs afterwards. But the funniest of all the free lunches, and I'm finishing, is the free lunch of the Laffer curve. You know this Laffer curve, which is a Tea Party idea at the time. There were no Tea Party then, but the guy of the extreme right in America, the Republicans, they've built this idea of the Laffer curve, which is right, but the point is that they were in the decreasing side of the Laffer curve, so we can reduce taxes and actually increase the receipts. Well, most of this talk about growth and austerity is a variation, now from the left, funny enough, of the Laffer curve. We reduce taxes, and the growth will be enough for us to solve the deficit problem, which is a variation of the Laffer curve, and everybody knows that on the decreasing side is a free lunch. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, especially for, of course, for your presentation, but also for your wise use of time.